Tech. Here we go. Nearly. Okay, Melanie, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So thank you for waking up early for us. Melanie is the other side of the world, so I'm super appreciative that you got up early to share your knowledge with us, and I'm super excited to talk to you. So, how about you introduce yourself to our little community? Tell us a bit about what you do, how you got into helping mums declutter their lives.
For sure. So first of all, thank you for inviting me and having me. It's just, I'm always so amazed at how we can come together from literally other sides of the world to collaborate and meet new people. And so I'm really excited to be here. Oh, I love it. Hello, good morning, little one. But yeah, so a little bit about me. I am a mom of two little girls. They are currently ages 1 and 2. So well, almost three. We're like a couple weeks away. But yeah, so I'm very much so in the toddler phase of motherhood. It has been a interesting journey, definitely one that's been more of a challenge than I ever thought, right? And that's honestly a huge part of my decluttering story in a lot of ways. But yeah, so I got into the business per se of teaching moms how to clutter or declutter at the beginning of this year. But it actually started for me probably about 3 or so years back, when I started this journey of motherhood, And so for me, I was born and raised in a very cluttered home. And so for me, like the clutter and the chaos and the everything was just kind of normal, like you just learn to function that way. I'm one of 6 kids. And so there was always noise, always chaos. And I got to the point where I just prided myself on being able to function in a chaotic environment. And I was like almost proud of that, right? Like, oh, I can function in the eye of a hurricane, like I can do this. And I didn't realize how much it was taking a toll on me mentally and what that was actually doing on even a subconscious level. And so at the time I was working with a YouTuber, and he started this personal development program. And he actually started calling like the mess in our space and like the different things in our life, he started calling them leeches, because they would actually kind of leech your energy. And so at the beginning of this year, I actually stepped away from that job and kind of took this concept and really ran with what I had been doing. And so a couple of years, to kind of give you a little bit of backstory, like when I really started digging into this whole thing was after I had miscarried my second child. And I just knew that something needed to change in my life. There was too much chaos. I carried all of that from my childhood into my adulthood. Life was crazy, motherhood was crazy, and I just decided something needed to give. And so as I started kind of taking this concept, right, of removing these things that were leeching my energy in my life, I started realizing that I was getting far more than a clean home. I actually started receiving a lot of like mental clarity, which was really crazy to me. And so at the beginning of this year, when I started really stepping into this space of coaching moms, I started actually developing systems for moms specifically, more than just these like general concepts. And that's really where I birthed my program, the Maximized Mom, where I actually help moms to escape the overwhelm and the survival mode and actually kind of take a journey of discovery of themselves through their home, which is kind of a really cool process.
It's a really interesting concept, and I talk to a lot of people. I've had this conversation a few times actually, where you clean and you feel like you're cleaning all the time, and your house is clean, right? But it's not, because there's all of this mess around, and it's a completely different thing. So it's like we're living in a clean environment, But then, for example, I go and look in my linen cupboard and I've got all of these mismatched sheets that I never use, and like random pillowcases that I had when I was 20. And then I look in my wardrobe and I've got stuff that, like, I honestly think I wear maybe 2% of what's in my wardrobe. In the chat, guys, tell me what percentage of your wardrobe you wear. I want to know if I'm alone here, because I don't think I am. And, we hold on to all of this stuff, and I see where you're coming from. It sort of leads to, well, I don't know. What does it lead to? Extra think?
Well, so let me kind of explain. And this is what I came to as I was going through this journey. And this is honestly, like, when this clicked in my mind, it was truly this light bulb, because let me put it this way. So how many of you guys are familiar with like how an irrigation system works, right? Like, if you have plants in your backyard, you flip on the system and then it runs and it waters everything for you, right? So in our yard, right, where we live, I live in the southwest of the USA. And so it is like desert. I don't even know why we have plants here. Like, it is desert. And so when we moved into our home, I wanted a nice backyard, because I was like, okay, like, I don't want to be dealing with just like tumbleweeds. I don't know. Have you ever seen a tumbleweed? Or is that just like a purely yeah, like cowboy film, like tumbleweeds, like we get those across the highway. It's so that's what we got here. And so I remember when we got our backyard installed, they put in an irrigation system, and sure enough, the non-green thumb that I am, everything died, except for just a couple plants. And so every time I would flip on the irrigation system, everything would get watered, including the dead ground. Okay, now this is really important, because this is an example of what's happening in our home. Like you were just talking about, I only use 2% of the things in my closet, but this is what's really interesting, is everything, every object in our environment actually consumes our mental and physical energy, even if you're not using it. Just like in my backyard, I was watering plants when I'd flip on this irrigation system. I was watering the plants that were alive, but I was also watering the plants that were dead. And so we have to, and this is what I teach my students, is we have to make this shift of viewing our things as just things. And we have to start actually viewing them as energy in our life. Because the truth is, every time you walk into your closet, regardless of whether you're wearing 1 shirt or 2 shirts or 10 shirts, you are actually pouring out energy into that closet space. And so a lot of times what happens is we fill spaces with stuff because we don't know what to do with it, but you're actually exerting energy on those things, whether you want to or you don't. Does that kind of make sense?
Why do you think we hold on to stuff in our closet? And I've been thinking about this since, we connected and, we decided we'd do this chat together. I've actually got a few bags of stuff here. I've been decluttering my house. See, like
look at you.
I have started to clean out my closet, and I'm like, why am I holding on to these things? Because a lot of them don't fit me. A lot of them are things that I would probably never even want to wear again. I've chucked out all of my maternity stuff because I'm kind of like, no, I'm not going to get pregnant again. That can all go. But then all of this stuff from, my past, it's a struggle for me to get rid of some of it when I know that I will probably, like 99%, never wear it again.
Absolutely. So this is actually,
guys, does this resonate with anyone here? Let's get the chat going.
For sure. And I'd actually, if you're willing, I'd actually love to take you through a little bit of an exercise here, so you can kind of see how this works in practice, because this is really what I feel is what makes my process different. Is this isn't just about getting rid of things. It's digging into the mental, emotional, and sometimes even spiritual connection to our things. Because
I get sentimental with clothes. And I think that's part of it too. Like I look at something and I'm like, wow, I remember this and this and this and this. And I probably wouldn't have remembered those things if I didn't look at that piece of clothing just then.
100%. And so this is actually a concept that that I came up with to kind of describe what you're feeling, because this is honestly really normal. Is people try to get rid of things and then they hit this roadblock, right? And they're like, oh, well, I feel sentimental. And for a lot of us, we think that if something is sentimental, we should keep it because it's memories, right? But the truth is it's still consuming our energy. And so I call this, I'm not exactly sure the name, I'm still working on that, but it's like the 3 O's of our stuff, okay? Everything is an object. And with that, there is an opportunity connected and an origin. So you have object, opportunity, and origin. So let me break that down. So let's say, for example, let me pick something on my desk. Okay, this might be a little gross, but these are my aligners for my teeth, okay? And I'm gonna get to this, I promise. So on the surface, this is just a piece of plastic, right? However, there is also an attached opportunity of how I can use this, okay? So what do, right? They're to straighten my teeth, right? Because that's the opportunity, is when I have this object in my life, I also get the opportunity of straight teeth. Okay. And then along with that, there's also what I call the origin, which is basically, what is the story? What do we believe about this thing? And so for me, for these, the story is that I grew up with horribly crooked teeth. And there was a lot of anxiety and pain and really false beliefs about the world, because my mom always told me that if I cared about having straight teeth, it meant I was a vain person. And just for reference, I don't have a great relationship with my mom. And so there was a lot of pain attached to crooked teeth, right? And so when I bring this object into my life, this is not just a little piece of plastic. This actually represents an opportunity, and it represents a story in my life. Does that make sense? And so this is true with everything in our life. And so what happens is when we get stuck on getting rid of something, we have to look at it and we have to ask ourselves, okay, what is the opportunity I'm clinging on to? Because it's not that you're clinging on to a piece of cotton, right? Like I highly doubt that you are completely obsessed with keeping all this cloth in your life. It's that there is something that it represents in your life, right? Maybe it represented a time where you were a different person. Maybe it represented a season of life that there's a part of you that doesn't want to move on from, right? And so what it does is the object represents the opportunity. For me, I was 100% in that camp of I probably didn't wear 95% of my clothes, if not more. And for me, a big thing was I always wanted to be the skinny, thin little girl. That's who I wanted to be because that's what all my friends were that were popular, that were asked out. And I'm not. Like I have broad shoulders. I am a very masculine build. Like that's just how I am. But when I was growing up and going into my adulthood, I wanted to be thin. I wanted to be small. And so I filled my closet with things that were small because that's who I wanted to be. That was my opportunity. I wanted to be small. And so when I actually got rid of the small things in my closet, I was also giving up this story in my mind of being this small person. And so clearing out my closet actually was an exercise of accepting my true self and where I was at now, rather than who I wanted to be or who I always told myself I needed to be. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Sarah's got a valid point too here. She says she hates how poorly things are made now. So things that are actually well made and last are the things that she sort of has trouble letting go of, which is true. Like we do live in a fast fashion culture a little bit. Yeah. Your point is interesting. So with my coaching ladies that I work with, so I sort of talk about this concept of be, do, have. Okay,
I've
so
heard of that.
you've heard of this, yeah?
Yes, I have.
So the concept is essentially like, think about the things that you want to have in your life. Think about the things that you want. You want, like you want it to be super small and super skinny, or you want to have a successful business. You want to have time with your family, time with your partner, all of these things. And the idea is that we sort of have to work back from those things that we want to have, to work out what we need to do to get them, obviously, and then to work out who is the person that has these things, and we need to start being her now, right?
Yes.
So we need to start being the person that does the things that has what we want to have. So this concept is sort of is it the same thing, or is it the opposite thing?
So it's very, very similar. And I love that you bring this up, because this is actually one of the concepts that I started my own personal growth journey on, be, do, have, which is so crazy. And I think it is 100% this concept. It's almost like twofold though, because when you look at the things currently in your life, you have to almost trace this back to who you are, or who you've been to get there, right? Like, why am I holding on to this? Who is the person that's holding on to this? And that way, that almost gives you permission to say, but that's not who I want to be. So I need to release that. Does that make sense? Because you have to look at your things and say, you know what? The person who has this is scared of this. The person who has this is really unhappy in her body. The person who has this is a mom who feels really insecure that she has to keep everything, right? And so we have to say, and it's just about awareness. And that's like one of the biggest things is I feel like when people think about decluttering, they think about just get rid of everything. And I don't believe that. I don't believe you should get rid of everything. I think that there are objects in your life that represent really beautiful seasons of life. And if holding on to that is something that is right for you in your life, then you should do that. And so when you kind of step into this place of awareness, it's not about getting rid of things. It's about awareness of who you want to be. Who do you want to be as a mom? What life do you want to create? Because your home should support and it should reflect the life you want to build. So for me, as an entrepreneur, I want a life that is focused on this successful business in my family. And so with that, I've decluttered from my life so many things that were drawing my attention and drawing my focus. And it basically eliminates that opportunity. And it brings me back into what I actually want, right? Be, do, have. What do I actually want to have? And so you have to be that person.
I love it. I love that we haven't chatted about this concept and we're both so on board with it.
I love it. And even like, if I can use Sarah's example, where, she says, I struggle to get rid of things that are well made and will last. We have to kind of dig into ourselves a little bit and say, where does that belief come from? And what is the belief that I'm projecting onto my things? And there's nothing wrong with keeping things that are well made and they'll last, but you have to ask yourself, how does that support my journey? Like my personal journey. I had a student that she was very similar in the sense of, she told me, I feel really wasteful getting rid of this stuff because it's just going to sit in a landfill and I don't want it to do that. And I had to tell her, I told her, it's already been put into this world. So you keeping it in your space isn't actually keeping it out of the landfill. Because bottom line is, when you die, where do you think it's going, right? The trick is being intentional on the front end, right? What do you want to bring into your life? Because the truth is, if we've already filled our life with things that don't support us, we can't change that. All we can do is, what do we want to do moving forward? And so a lot of times, like for me, I never wanted to let go of things because I had a fundamental belief from my childhood that if you let go of things that are still useful, you are a wasteful person. And so I wasn't filling my home with things that brought me joy. I was filling my life with things that brought me guilt because I felt like I couldn't let go. And I was putting that burden of guilt on myself. And so, and I don't know if that's where you're at, Sarah, but this is kind of just an example of what we have to dig into is, what are the beliefs we hold that are keeping us attached to these things? Because if it's not something you actually use, keeping it in your life, why? Why are we keeping it in our life? Because it is actively drawing our energy, whether we want it to or not.
I think the tricky thing is we all get caught up in this whirlwind of life. Like you get on the roller coaster and then you're just going through the motions and everything's so busy and everything's so hectic. Like we very rarely stop, hit pause and check in with ourselves and see how we feel about all this stuff that we're accumulating. So, you know, you get 5 years down the track, 10 years, 20 years, and then you're like me, you walk into your closet and you're like, I don't even wear any of this stuff. It's not something that I think is easy to consciously do all the time. Like what do you sort of recommend? Like, do you think it's important to sort of every year or every month or, you know, to go and like look at your space and go, is this making me happy? Like, is this what I value and what I, you know, see myself doing going forward? Like, is that something that you do?
So I actually do this on a daily basis. And please don't look at this as like I declutter my home every day, because that is not the point. I really view clearing out your home as actually a clearing out of your mind. And so a lot of times people look at their home as, okay, it's time for my yearly declutter. But the truth is, if the only time you ever checked in with your emotions was on a yearly basis, how would your mental state be? And for a lot of us moms, we actually do only check in on our emotions every, you know, when we have a chance away from the kids, right? And so I'm a big believer of just awareness. And so one of the big things that I teach is to use your emotions as cues that something needs to change in your environment. So in my membership right now, we're actually in what I call annoying week, where we're focusing on the things that are annoying to us. Because a lot of times what happens is we experience our things trigger emotions for us. I don't know if you've ever walked into a room full of laundry and felt a certain kind of way, you know? And so we have to use those emotions to say, what's going on here? Because if I'm experiencing emotion or I'm experiencing sadness every time I look at this piece of clothing, not piece of shirt, piece of clothing. If I am experiencing an emotion evoked by a thing, then I need to do something about it. And so this process of decluttering, I actually take my students, I have them do 15 minutes a day. I don't think you need to spend more than that. I think I'm not even a big fan of like spring cleaning. I think that this needs to be a daily thing because your home supports you. You're in your home daily. And so it really is just tapping into your own awareness and saying, what is this thing doing for me? Right? So kind of a prime example of this, and I'll give you two. So what I started doing is I have a giveaway bin in my closet. And my rule when I kind of first started this journey, because I got rid of all the things on the surface that I was like, I never wear this, I'm not going to use it. I got rid of it. And that alone was about 10 boxes of stuff. But there was still the things that, you know, I knew I didn't wear, but I just couldn't part with it. And so I made myself a rule and I said, if I go to put something on, and I go to put it back because it makes me feel not good, it goes in the giveaway. And at first that was really hard because I would pick up things and, you feel that twinge of, I'm just not feeling it. It doesn't make me feel good. But I would just put it right back because there was a part of me that said, but you should like this. But it's a cute shirt. You should like it. But the truth was I didn't. It didn't make my body feel good. It didn't make me feel sexy and strong and confident and however I wanted to feel. It didn't make me feel that way. And so I decided if it doesn't make me feel good and I go to put it back, I put it in the giveaway. Because the truth is, you should fill your wardrobe with things that make you feel good about yourself. And as you go through this journey, that might be 10 things, right? But that's okay. And another example of this is, have you ever went to like open your kitchen drawer and it gets stuck with like the utensils? What's the emotion you feel, right? I'm about ready to punch something. I'm like, open the drawer. And so that emotion you're feeling, what do most of us do? We finally get the drawer open and we're so frustrated and we shove everything back in and then close the drawer. Does that make sense? And so it's using those little emotions we feel to say, I'm really annoyed with this drawer. So instead of just being annoyed with this drawer every time I go to open it for the next year, I'm going to just do something about it right now. I'm going to survey and I'm going to say, what is making this frustrating to me? Okay, there's this lemon zester I never use. Okay, there's this avocado cutter thingy. Let's just get rid of it. And so, okay, let me take a couple of things and let's move on. And so really, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I can see how this process makes you more attuned to yourself, which is, I think, something that a lot of us struggle with, especially becoming mums, especially new mums. You sort of stop to put yourself first, and a lot of us find it very difficult to put ourselves first and to sort of feel ourselves again. And I think that this process, I really love the concept behind it, because I think it just helps you to focus on you again, just in those everyday moments, going around the house, pottering around the house. Like these are the things that can sort of, those tiny actions can just trigger you to start checking in with yourself a little bit more.
100%. And this is why I love decluttering so much, is because I feel like our home is the most tangible representation of what's going on in our mind. And at least for me, when I stepped into motherhood, there was so much stuff, because there was so much about raising a child that I didn't know. And so I just brought in all these gadgets and things and clothes, and people gave me bags of clothes from their kids. And I just felt like this avalanche of stuff was just now in my vicinity that I didn't really know what to do with. And that's honestly a really beautiful parallel to how it feels in your mind, because you bring home this child that you love with everything in your being, but you feel so overwhelmed with, I don't even know who I am anymore. And so when we actually start becoming in tune with our environment and what is in our life, it really gives us cues to what's happening in our mind. Because especially in westernized culture, we're taught that things will remedy emotions. That's just what we're taught. And so a lot of times we fill our life with things that represent our emotions. It represents them. And so when we actually tune into these things, it cues us as to, well, what is the emotion? What is the story? What do you believe? Why did you bring this into your life? And then we can start dealing with that. And sometimes it's simple things. Sometimes it's really deep things. And this is why it's not a one-time process. It's not a once a year, once a quarter type of process. It truly is a daily process of saying, what have I brought into my life? And do I want that?
What do you do with stuff that people give you I've never had much in the past, right? Like I have never been a very material person. And like settle down, have some kids, and everyone's like, oh well, you'll need this, and you'll need these salad bowls, and you'll need this picture on the wall, and you'll need this for the kids, and you'll need like all of these toys. And all of a sudden, you sort of get to the point where you're like, oh, I've got all of this stuff. I didn't bring it into my space, but now it's here, and I've been given it. I've been gifted it. What do you do with stuff like that?
So I think the number one thing is to, first of all, ask yourself what emotions you feel when you want to get rid of it. So let me ask you, for all these things that have been given to you, why is it that you believe personally that you should keep it?
Because people have gone to the effort of getting me something that they think will improve my life.
And why does that feel special to you?
Because I value the fact that people are taking time out of their day to consider my needs.
I love that. So now that you kind of have this deeper understanding of you're keeping things because to you, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it represents that somebody cares for you. And so for a lot of us, and a lot of us feel that way, right? And so when we let go of the thing, we feel like we're tossing aside what they did. But the truth is, and we have to ask ourselves if we believe this to be true, does getting rid of the thing get rid of the relationship? And you have to answer that for yourself. Does getting rid of the thing get rid of the relationship? And that's just something to think on. I mean, you don't have to answer that right now. But this is the line of questioning we need to take ourselves through, because the first step is to be internal. The second step is obviously sometimes there are instances where people get upset, right? Like I have some students that are like, if I get rid of this, my mom's going to be really upset because she always asks me, what can I get for the kids and all this and that and the other. And so there's the internal look that we have to say, why do I feel like keeping this? Because for some people, they keep things out of a sense of guilt, not out of joy. They keep it because if I get rid of this and they find out, they're going to be angry at me, type of thing. And so we need to look internal first. And then we need to be able to take that truth that we come to and be brave. And this is one of the things that I teach my students is removing things from your life is actually an act of bravery. Just like showing up for yourself, working out every day is an act of bravery, because you're looking at the person you are and saying, I'm going to be better. I'm going to chip something away from myself to become the person I want to be. And so you have to take what you know to be true, and you need to make decisions moving forward. So if you are feeling overwhelmed in your life by all this stuff that people are giving you, which honestly is most of the time they want to do something for you, right? You have to be able to say, I'm the only one who lives my life. And if my life is going to be better without this thing, then I need to be willing to part with it. Even if somebody gets upset, even if somebody asks about it, or even if I might feel like I'm letting go of a relationship because inside that's not true. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love it. Any questions, anyone? Does anyone have any comments, any questions? Write them in the chat or take yourself off mute for a second if you want to ask us something. But Melanie, you've had your own, I suppose, fitness transformation as well.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because, we're all here really in this group to improve our health a little bit and to level up health-wise. How has your decluttering journey helped your physical health as well as your mental health?
Yeah, for sure. So let me give you the long story short. So when I was a kid, I experienced my dad with very uncontrolled diabetes in his life. to the point where he developed severe neuropathy in his feet. And then one day he came home from a work site because he works like in construction zones. He came home with a screw in his foot and almost had to have his foot amputated because he didn't feel it. And so for me growing up, I had this severe fear of becoming diabetic. And so my health journey, let's say, has been very intertwined into my life and even my weight loss journey. And so for me growing up, I was always deathly afraid of this. And so when I became pregnant with my first daughter, I had already been struggling with a high A1C. I had been struggling with this kind of pre-diabetic diagnosis. Nothing was working. And so when I became pregnant, I immediately had to see a specialist to manage my blood sugars, because obviously high blood sugars are not okay for a baby. And in that journey, I started on insulin, and it was game-changing for me. But I went through the entire pregnancy very scared to eat anything, very scared to gain weight. And so my first pregnancy, I was like pristine. I was like, I am only eating the additional calories I need. And when I had her, I bounced back because I was on it. Fast forward to my second baby, and I actually understood insulin, and it was a good growth pattern. But with that, I felt a lot more liberty to eat. And I think I ate for 2 pregnancies in one, and I gained about 80 pounds with this second kid. And so with that, when I had my daughter and, all of the initial postpartum swelling and bloating and all that stuff went away, I was left with about 40 pounds to lose. And so I kind of started this weight loss journey, and I found that it was really difficult because every morning I would wake up to work out. I would try to, count my calories and whatnot. And the fact that I had to spend my morning cleaning up was keeping me from working on my working out. And so this is when, once again, I looked internally and I said, what's going on here? Because I feel very frustrated that I'm struggling with my fitness goals because I'm cleaning. And so what I did is I actually decluttered a space to make room for my goal. And so to this day, I think I'm about a year and a month in, and I've lost 32 pounds down. And it's been completely transformational. But I attribute it to the fact that I made myself a space in my home to do that, because I was super well intentioned, but I'd wake up and I'd literally spend my whole morning cleaning up and putting things away and trying to get back on track. And so our home actually does support our goals, whether we believe it or not.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I love it.
And
all right, let's talk about some tips that we can sort of start to implement maybe. All right, we want to sort of sit down and start to declutter our homes. We want to go through who I am, who I want to be, what do I want to have. We do a little bit of introspective work out where we're at. This is our first step, I assume. How do we start this big process?
So the number one thing that I start people with, because this doesn't have to be big and overwhelming, it really doesn't. The number one thing is what I call the 15 minutes of focus. And this is paired with what I call the 90-second start. Okay, so it's this process of show up every day for a minimum of 90 seconds. That's it. And so I'm a big believer in using a timer. So you get out your phone, and I use my Apple Watch. I say, hey, Siri, start a timer for 90 seconds. And now my daughter,
2 minutes and 30 seconds, starting now.
Sorry, guys. It took me seriously. And my daughter does this now. She's almost 3, and she goes, hey, Siri. Hey, Siri. It's the cutest thing. At least I think so. So what I do is I start a timer for 90 seconds. And I tell myself, I am showing up for 90 seconds all in. Because the problem that a lot of us face is not that we don't know how to clean. The problem is that when we start this process, we bounce from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. right? Have you ever experienced that? You start doing the dishes and then you find this toy and then you're over here. And then before you know it, you're doing a load of laundry and then you loop back to the dishes and it's an hour later and you haven't really gotten anything done. The key here is locked in focus, because most people, if you actually lock in, you can do more in 90 seconds than you normally get done in 15 minutes because you're focused. And that's the key here. So step one is, I would say, we're showing up for a minimum of 90 seconds a day, because for a lot of people, they feel like they can't start because they don't want to start this big process. But the truth is, if you show up every day, even for 90 seconds, you're going to make progress in your goals and in your home. And then this leads me into the second piece. So once you show up for that 90 seconds, after that, you decide, am I going to keep going or am I done? And if you are done, then that's okay. You showed up and you did it. But if you want to keep going, then we continue this process for another 15 minutes and we lock in for a 15-minute section of just one area. We're looking at a drawer. We're tackling our counter. We are just doing a couple things in our closet. And you can make massive, massive changes 15 minutes at a time if you are just committed and you lock in.
I think the timer thing is a really good idea. I talk about this a lot with my coaching clients as well. Like if I try and clean my floors, it can take me either 8 hours of doing a whip around, like I'll pick the toys up and then realize that, by the time I get back to where I started, they're all out again, do it again, go do something else, come back, give it a sweep, go do something else. Do you know what I mean? Procrastinate a little bit. And then, 8 hours later, finally, I've got a clean floor. Or I can set a timer and get it done in 40 minutes, like that whole entire process. And the focus is the key. And I know, as women, we all like to multitask, and I'm all for multitasking, but sometimes it does lead to overwhelm, particularly when your to-do list is so long and there's so much stuff on it. And we all experience this, right? Like we've all got a to-do list a mile long. You start doing something and then you're like, oh no, that's not as important. I'll start this instead because I think that I need to be doing this first. And then you're like, oh, I forgot I need to do this as well. And like you say, you're jumping around all the time and nothing's getting done. And so, having that focus and having your priorities of, today I'm going to be okay with just doing 15 minutes of this one thing, or I'm going to be okay with ticking off 3 things of my to-do list and forgetting about the next 50. Like I'm going to be okay with just doing, these few things instead of trying to do it all at once. And I think it's a really good way to cut through the overwhelm that we all experience. And it's a process that I do now. I write down like the top 3 things that I need to do each day, and I tick them off before I do anything else. And it's a really good process. And I know a lot of the ladies that I work with, they do the same thing and they find it really valuable. And
I love that.
Set a timer. You can get a lot done in 15 minutes. Like
you can.
Your mother-in-law is coming over, or your judgy friend is about to come over, and you're doing like this massive whip around of the house. Like you can actually get a lot done.
Exactly.
The kids are asleep. I'm like, oh yes, I can do this, 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 this. You can do heaps. You don't need to be spending the whole day doing stuff. And I think when you like I said, with doing the floors, like you do a bit here and then 2 hours later you do another bit and then 2 hours later you do another bit, you get into the sort of the feeling that you are doing things all day and you are cleaning every day, or you're picking up after people all day, because you sort of have been, like, even though it hasn't been constant throughout the day, it's been, dribs and drabs through the day. And so in your head, you're like, this is never ending. And I think that feeling it's a draining feeling when you're stuck there all the time.
100%. And like I have a student of mine, she started a couple months ago, and she would not go into her closet. It was so cluttered. It was so full of stuff that she told me, I just closed the door. I can't even go in there. And she has been implementing 15 minutes every single day. I have a video that they just hit play on, and it walks them through and keeps them focused. And in a month, she got rid of, I think she said 18 bags of things just by 15 minutes a day. You can get so much done when you focus. And I love your example of the floors, because I have been there before.
Yeah. And I think anything to get a little bit of that mental overwhelm or the mess out of your head, it's going to help, right? Like, we all get stuck in our heads too much. We all running around doing, a million things at once. And I know it is overwhelming and it is stressful. So any little thing that you can use to sort of cut through that in your mind, it helps. Like, save those hours for doing something for yourself, or save those hours for actually checking in to yourself and seeing how you feel, like you were saying earlier.
Exactly.
That time for a workout, like you're finding time here, and you're finding mental energy, which I think is the big thing, and that's the thing that we struggle with a lot. Bindi,
Exactly.
any tips for toys? Yeah.
Okay. So toys is a big one. Okay. And first of all, I just want to start by saying that for me, I got rid of probably about 85% of my kids' toys. I got rid of a lot. And I noticed a huge improvement in their mental state, because we have to say, okay, if I get overwhelmed by the clutter, they're getting overwhelmed. The only difference is they don't know how to bottle it up and internalize it. They just freak out, right? And so if we're having big meltdowns from our kids, it's worth looking at their environment and saying, what are they spending their time in? And so that's kind of the first thing, is, once again, we have to look internally and say, okay, if things trigger emotions for me, they also trigger emotions for my kids. My daughter, when she has something that is really like important to her and I try to take it away, oh, it's just meltdown, right? Because she's experiencing an emotion from the thing. And so that's the number one thing. Number two is, I think that you need to make sure that you're approaching it the same way, 15 minutes a day, seeing what you can remove, but also being mindful of what emotions it's bringing you as mom. I'll go ahead and just tell you what I do with my toys, because toys drive me absolutely crazy. I actually keep all my toys away from the kids. They are all like in a closed cabinet, and every day I pull out 2 or 3 that I am comfortable cleaning at the end of the day, because I want them to have the best mom possible. And the best mom, me cleaning up an entire room of toys 10 times a day, is not the best mom possible. So I think this is going to be different for everybody. And of course, there's lots of different tips for organizing or for your home specifically. I personally use all my empty protein powder containers to store my toys in. Every time I finish a bin of protein powder, I rip off the label and I put toys in it. And that's what I use to store my toys. So there's a lot of tips for kind of what you can do. But at the heart of it, and really all we're able to really get into in this call, is it's important to look at what those toys are doing. What are the emotions that are being evoked for you and for your kids? Are your kids often feeling really overwhelmed? Are they having lots of meltdowns? Do they feel really scattered? Do you have a hard time getting them ready in the morning because there's so much stuff in their environment? I know that was a huge thing for me, is the getting ready in the morning process was hell, because it was just, my kids were bouncing from this to that to the other. Nighttime routine was awful. They wouldn't go to bed because there was so much stuff in their room. And so I just decided, I can't do this. So I took all the toys out of their room. I put the toys away, and it just improved our entire morning and nighttime routines, because I was removing the stimulus from their environment. So does that help? Let me know if that answers your questions or if you have any more on that.
I think it's an interesting experiment. I never really would have thought that. I've never thought the effect that would have on kids the same as it would have on me. And obviously I should think that, right? My toy situation is like the exact opposite of what you've described. And it does get a little bit chaotic, I won't lie. So I'm open to experimentation.
And that, I think, is really the thing, is it's experimenting for your home, because everybody's home, everybody's life is different. And it's not about finding someone else's perfect system. It's about trying what works for you and tweaking it until it works. And it's really this process of you have to, and this is why you have to show up every day, is because you're not going to find the perfect system. It takes multiple iterations of tweaking. Like, I tried this. Okay, that did not work. Let's try something else. I just tried something the other day. We were trying to move my little one out of her crib and put her in the room with my daughter. And that was a nightmare because she's crazy. And so we tried it. It was a disaster. They didn't sleep at all. We didn't sleep at all. And so we put her back in the crib, right? It's really just playing with it and figuring out what works for you. And so when we tap into these emotions, we try something, right? Maybe you do try, I'm going to put all the toys away. I'm going to put them in an empty room and give them one toy and see what happens. And if that works, awesome. If it doesn't, let's try to dissect, okay, was it the whole concept that didn't work, or was it certain things? And it just kind of becomes this game of saying what worked, what didn't. Because that's all we have to do in our life, right? And so a lot of times we think that we can just find the perfect system, plug our kids into it, and we'll just have like unicorns and rainbows going off. And it doesn't work that way. We have to actually lead the charge. And we have to remember that the environment we put them in is teaching them how to process their things. And it's going to be a transition for them, especially because I talk to a lot of women who have kids that are a little bit older, right? Like, my kids are little. My daughter is 1 and almost 3. And while they're napping, I can sneak toys away and they don't even know it, right? But when you get older kids, it becomes a little bit different because they now have attachments to these things. And so the process does change based on where you're at in motherhood, based on how your kids have grown up. And so this isn't a one size fits all solution. And that's why I'm very hesitant to say, do this system, because what works for me in my home with my kids, with their temperaments, might be completely different for you.
Well, I guess it's just cluing into, what you were saying before, cluing into how you're feeling and how your family's feeling. Like, we can all read that as mums, and I think that's it. Just being aware of what's going on in here and in our family environment, I guess.
Yeah. And really, and this is something I'll just be really transparent with you guys, like, it's being honest with your kids about what's actually happening. I think that a lot of parents feel the need to somehow come to their kids with this perfect put together life. And the truth is, when you explain to kids what's happening and why you're doing the things you're doing, you might get a tantrum on the outside, but the truth is they're internalizing. So even just to give you an example, yesterday, I was able to take my changing table and put it on the curb and just give it away. My daughter, she's not potty trained, but she's a little hurricane. And so changing her diaper, she hits her head, and then it's just a nightmare. I just hold her on the floor. So we got rid of the changing table, right? And my older daughter is incredibly sentimental, incredibly. And she's grown up with me getting rid of things. And so it's not like this is a new concept to her, but she's getting old enough now to where she's developing emotional connections. And so as we went outside to go for a walk, and she sees the changing table and she starts crying. And she tells me, she said, changing table, go inside. And she wanted to keep it, even though she hasn't had her diaper changed on it in probably at least a year. And we took her out to the changing table and we let her sit on it and we let her say hello to it. And I explained to her, we are giving this to someone else who needs it. And I understand you're disappointed. I understand this has brought you a lot of good memories, hasn't it? And she's like, yes. And it's acknowledging what's happening with your kids and helping them put words to the emotions they're feeling. And the only way you're going to be able to do this is by tapping into your own emotions and saying, this thing brings me a lot of good memories. And that's really sad, but you know what? I'm moving on from it. And so it's almost this, give your kids grace and just be open. I've even told my daughter before that we were getting rid of this big bag of balls and it was driving me crazy. And so I told her, I'm like, Janessa, I'm getting rid of the balls because they're driving mommy crazy. And I don't want to be a crazy mom. Okay. And then she started telling everyone, mama gets rid of the balls. They drive mama crazy. And so it's okay to even let that be the reason, is getting rid of this toy, assuming there isn't some like really deep connection your kids have, but sometimes getting rid of things for you as mom is totally okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to be happy in our environment at the end of the day, don't we?
Yes. Because if you're not your best self, no toy is going to make up for the fact that you're a stressed out mess who's anxious and annoyed and angry at everybody. Because I'm telling you, I've had days where my home was a crazy mess and I was not a nice mom. And in the long run, it is so much more worth it to get rid of the toys and deal with the emotions than it is to be a mom who isn't the best version of herself for her kids. Because the kids will get over the toys.
That's it. And, like it's something that I'm really passionate about, like showing up for your kids, teaching them that, healthy is normal, and to move your body and to love your body and to put good food into your body and to, help them be better than what we've been, I guess. And you can't do that when your cup's empty and you're stressed out and all of those things. So, yeah, I think, great. Melanie, tell us how to reach you. Tell us about your program, how people can contact you if they want to get in touch, talk a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love to invite all of you guys to connect with me on Facebook. I can definitely, this is streaming in the group, right?
Well,
so I can
streaming in the group apparently, but I think there's an issue. Do you know? I think I've been locked out of my Facebook group.
Oh, that's not good.
I don't know. I'm going to have to put a complaint because I did a post a while of Zoom not long ago, or a post, and it got taken down when I was. Anyway, it's recorded. Everyone's on my mailing list. I'll get this out here somewhere.
Gotcha. Well, if you do want to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook. I'll post a link really quick to my profile in case you want to click it. But you can always just search for Melanie Shenberger, which is, I had an easy last name and then I got married and now I don't. Or if you're interested in actually like joining the program where I actually take people through this process, you can go to themaximizedmom.com, and that's where you can really find the program. But I would love if you connect and follow. And then even if you have questions or you have questions about your specific home, your specific space, I love getting to help moms with this because it has completely changed my family's life. It has changed my marriage. It has changed my body. It has changed my mental health. And it's sad because most moms feel like our home is something that we can just push back because we'll deal with it later. And we just learn to live in this state of clutter and chaos. And we don't realize how big of a toll it's taking on our ability to show up as the mom we want to be, as the partner we want to be, as the woman we want to be for ourselves even. And so I'm so passionate about helping moms with this, because it seems weird, but it just changes your life when you start actually tapping into the things and the energy of our things.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'll share all your details as well in the group. But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for getting up early for us. Does anyone have any questions for Melanie before we sign off in the chat, or take yourself off mute quickly? I'm sure she's happy to answer a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
But if not, thank you for joining us. Kirby, thank you. Thanks everyone for jumping on. I'm not sure if the live stream was happening, so what I'll do is upload the recording in the group and everyone can access it then. Thanks for jumping on, everyone, and thank you for your time. It's been really, really great to talk to you. Thanks for sharing what you do and what you know, and I'm inspired to continue my decluttering journey, which I've just begun, like literally in the last week.
Well, thank you so much for having me and allowing me into this space to share this. And please continue to reach out. I'll help you get there, because it's freeing.
Thank you. All right.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Bye.